On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, Chris MacFarland met with the media to talk about the Ryan Lindgren trade, the Gabe Landeskog news, and a lot more. So we're going to talk about what he talked about. New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. And if you want to get in on the conversation, join our subtext. The link is in the show notes below. Chat with Kyle and I one-on-one, and we get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast. We'll get our subtext cruise thoughts on the MacFarland press conference. Mainly, most of them chimed in on the Gabe Landeskog stuff. No surprise there. So that's where I kind of want to start, Kyle. We'll start there because if you're watching on YouTube, it's like more no news on Gabe Landeskog is what I have in the bullet point. But that's, I maybe don't agree with that because I guess the news is that he's likely, we can kind of put it in pen that he's not going to be here for the regular season. I don't think he completely shut the door in the postseason, but we can pretty much say with confidence, no regular season for Gabe Landeskog, and that makes 3 in a row.
And we're surprised why.
I will, because again, I will go back to what they were all saying off season and preseason, and even from Gabe Landeskog's mouth of saying it's sooner rather than later. And that press conference that they had, and him saying that you just got the vibe that it was going to be within, I always say, the end of the calendar year of 2024. That was the impression that you got. And when you hear it from Gabe Landeskog, that's kind of, I'm going to say it. If he never said that, I'd be like, okay, we have to maybe look at this a different way. But that's why I'm surprised. I will say that I am surprised because of specifically what Gabe Landeskog had to say.
Well, I get it. If you're listening to their sound bites and their statements, you could and should feel that way. But again, this is like season 3 of Trailer Park Boys. Like, they get out of jail, they go through the season, and at the end, they get back in jail.
Go back in jail,
and it's honestly, it's been nothing but positive messaging since the Stanley Cup. It was, he had his knees bothering him. He had an injury, and then, he's rehabbing it. We're at year 3. And I think, and I get what you're about to say, like the press conference, it all sounded more promising. But the thing about this press conference with Chris MacFarland, I feel like the way he's talking, especially the line that has been headlines for a while today, is, you know where this is going. I feel like he's starting to get frustrated with.
It's funny you say that. Yeah.
You know where this is going. That's not ideally promising. And even like before he said that, like, he hasn't practiced and won't be practicing for the next couple days, which is, read between the lines, there must be something else, another little setback going on where he just doesn't feel like getting out there, and it's not 100%, and he's still rehabbing. Mm-hmm. And he even said, like, there's no playbook on this. We're 2.5 years in on this, and you didn't anticipate this happening, and you don't know what to do. But then turn around and say, yeah, he's awarded the time, he's earned every bit of it to figure it out. But you can't say, you know where this is going, but we're going to give him, if he needs 5 years, we'll give him 5 years.
It's funny that you say he seemed a little bit frustrated, because I thought he looked like he wanted to be anywhere but doing that press conference. And I think it's just the time of the year for him. Like, I think, he'd much rather be on a phone call right now than meeting the media, because he's usually very, like, welcoming, and he's okay answering questions, but he he kind of like shot back at a couple questions of like, one somebody asked about like Mikko Rantanen and flipping him. He's like, I'm not going to answer that. That's got nothing to do with our team. But just the way that he was reacting to some of the questions, I'm like, man, he just does not want to be there right now. This is a busy time of the season for him. He'd rather be working the phones. But when it comes to Landeskog, Kyle, I get a lot of enjoyment out of ripping on the Vegas Golden Knights for like abusing the LTIR, and part of me thinks the Avalanche are doing it right now because they if Gabe Landeskog was ready to go, they would be right now. Like, I mean, we're around the time where you're coming up to the trade deadline season. The fact that he's not ready to go, quote unquote, ready to go, like you would need to make some moves to get him back in and be cap compliant with his number that hits the cap. And it's not hitting the cap because he's on LTIR. So I'm kind of in the ballpark of, I think the Avs is he further along than they're letting us on? Maybe. And we'll see by playoff time. If he's one of those guys that round one, game one, he's ready to go. They did. They used the loophole like a lot of teams do. And I'm kind of in that world right now because I feel, could he go out there and play tomorrow? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Could he be ready by the end of the regular season? It's a possibility. And I don't want to minimize the injury. I don't want to say, suck it up, get out there. No, I'm not saying that at all. What Chris MacFarland said is true. He's awarded all the time he needs to be 100%, as close to 100% ready as he can be with this injury. But are the Avalanche telling him at this stage in the season, just take the rest of you don't need to push it because we need to make moves at the trade deadline. And we can't really fit you in. We have nowhere to fit you in right now. And if we did, we'd have to make moves that are not trade. Well, they would be trades. They would have to be bigger moves than the Avalanche want to make right now. Because what the Avalanche are going to make are these, depth moves, maybe. If they go for the Casey Middlestat one, which I kind of don't feel like they're going to do that anymore. I just feel like they're happy with, getting that line back. We've talked about that. I don't want to go into it again. But are they of the mind of like, we need to make these like smaller moves? And if we reintroduce Gabe Landeskog contract, we can't do that. Maybe there's a side conversation going on here. I'm just throwing it out.
Well, that's cute and adorable. And like, that's what I love about you. It's what I appreciate about you.
It's the business. It's the outside of things.
Well, and I get that, but what in the world are you doing? Like, why are we giving another year off for Landeskog and saying, oh, but the playoffs? What about a guy who hasn't played the game in almost 3 years excites me for him showing up in the playoffs? This is an investment that granted, you're not going to pay for in the regular season this year. That's great. That's wonderful. Whatever. Mm-hmm. But don't you kind of want to test it out? Like if he can't get out there to practice, what magical threshold are they crossing when they get in the playoffs where all aches and ills and injuries go far away? And it's going to be the 2022 version of Gabe Landeskog coming right out there in the playoffs. How is this gamble on a heightened stage? What about any of this? 3 years off, joining the team in the playoffs where we need you. Right. What if he's like 40% of his normal self, 50%? What if he goes out there and lasts 2 shifts and says, guys, I can't do it?
Yeah.
We've seen what this team reacts to when Val Nichushkin had to exit. Mm-hmm. Like, this is going to be a huge blow. And then it's big finger pointing at MacFarland like this 3-year smoke and mirrors game was all for nothing. That could damage a playoff push.
Well, but what's the harm in letting him do it? What is the harm in letting him take as much time as he needs? Because his number is not against the cap right now. It's not. So what's there's been no moves that the Avalanche have not made, and you can point to say like Gabe Landeskog is the reason they couldn't make that move. It hasn't happened because his number's not on the books. So you do that because in the playoffs, and here's the risk of it. Like you're saying, like you can't do it now. Like if say he was ready to go and you bring him in, you can't do it now. And then he does do those 1 or 2 shifts and he's like, guys, I can't do this. And now you're stuck. Now you can't go make moves to put in place of Gabe Landeskog. You can't do that. In the playoffs, you're sacrificing a game, which is a risk in the playoffs, but you can, because there's no cap in the playoffs. So if he's not going to go if he's 40, 50%. He's not going to do that. He's going to go when he's as close to, 80, 90% as someone with his injury can be. But in the playoffs, if he does that in the playoffs, you're screwed for a game, but then you can remove him and then you have the rest of your roster that you already had for the regular season in place for the playoffs. It makes sense. But they're not going to do it right now. At this point in the game, they're not going to bring him back in. And then if he can't go, well, that information would have been useful to me yesterday type of thing. And now we can't make moves. They're making the moves now and then welcome him back for the playoffs, hopefully, if he's ready to go. And if it doesn't work, the team that you just finished the regular season with is still intact. I'll take Chris MacFarland's job tomorrow. Thank you. No, I won't.
Yeah, I want to continue this in just a minute.
Okay. It's a fascinating topic. So we got that to get to. Obviously, he talked about the Lindgren trade. So we're going to bring that up and some really satisfying comments on Jared Bednar, which were, for people like you and I, just very welcoming. For other people, not so much. We'll get to that next. All right, Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber, better for you, unsaturated fats to help you keep you feeling fuller longer. Went over to the Wonderful Pistachios website, Mr. Sullivan, and they got some pretty nice flavors over there. I'm going to read these off to you. Let me know which one would you be ordering. You got the sea salt and pepper. You got jalapeno lime.
Yes.
You have a stop right there. You have seasoned salt and pepper, sweet chili, and then a no shells flavor. You have chili roasted, honey roasted, smoky barbecue, sea salt and vinegar. You're going jalapeno lime?
Oh, absolutely.
I am a honey roasted guy. Like honey roasted peanut butter is the best. I think I want some honey roasted pistachios. That sounds really good to me.
Jalapeno lime pistachios. That is perfect.
Just open up and just shove it like the whole bag in your mouth, basically.
I'll be a happy camper.
Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Just visit Wonderful Pistachios right now to go get all those flavors we listed and more. All right, so there was you wanted to follow up on what I was just saying about Mr. Landeskog?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying with all this, but it just doesn't track. Like, this is 3 years at this point. It's becoming a sideshow to where you're getting the comments of, where this is going. You don't see teams making this kind of stretch and roster LTIR moves for like Yager or Dustin Byfuglien or there's what's the we say this all the time, but what's the end goal? Like, if he can't practice today, and again, look around you, episode drops March 4th, 2025. It's been since 2022, June of 2022, since we've seen Gabe Landeskog play hockey. What are you anticipating? It's not like he's going to come out as Superman.
That's the weird part. You're right.
And for any other player in the league, this isn't like we're harnessing, like we're trying to get a legend to come back for one more time, or this is a 3-year thing. 1 year, I understood 100% what they were doing. 2, I was like, okay, what are we doing? This is now, I love Landeskog. Please do not get me wrong.
Yeah.
But this is a little ridiculous for any sports franchise. It doesn't just have to be the Avalanche and Landeskog. This could be anyone, anywhere. This could be Peyton Manning coming back to the Broncos. It would just be weird. And it's gone on. It's a little long in the tooth. And guess what? If they have to do, what if they say, oh, well, he's not ready for the playoffs? Well, what are we doing next year? What are we, 4 years? And what are you saying? What are you like? The more you push this, the less the value of return and the impact this makes. And honestly, whenever it happens, you're just like, okay, we waited for this. He comes through, he smiles, he waves, everybody's like, oh, that's our captain. And then what do you eventually the good stories have to go away and 60 minutes of hockey have to be played, and that's what matters to me.
You're right. The 3 years is the kind of the sticking point of, what are you expecting at this point? It like you're wanting him to come back just because it's a good story, but like, what are you expecting from him? What are you anticipating from him if he does come back? Because once you get over that, hey, he's back for game one. Now you got to go produce, and can he? That is a big question mark. That remains to be seen. So you're right. Like the 3-year part of it is the like, as it's just gone on for too long. I just want him to see him come back on the ice. And if it's only for, one more game and he couldn't do it, at least and he knows that he gave it a shot. But I mean, we were saying you can't do it more than a year. And then we said you can't do it more than 2 years. And now we're on the ball of it. Can you do it more than 3 years? I don't know. Like you wouldn't do this for many people.
Any people.
Over on subtext, a lot of people chiming in on that. Avs fan forever says, I'm struggling between being a huge Landy fan, but also being tired of all of it. Unless there is something in his contract that stipulates he retain the C throughout his contract. I think if he's not ready for a full season of hockey by next season, then he needs to transfer the C to someone he sees as a captain protege. I don't really think it's 100% up to him. I don't think he would mind if someone borrowed it, but I think that's an Avalanche brass thing. I love the guy. I wish things were different, but we're sitting at a highly probable assessment that we won't be getting the player back that he was before the injury. If the Avalanche front office were thinking proactively, a grooming program for him would have already been set up to take place in the front office. If he can't go, he's sticking with the franchise in some capacity. That could be one of those things where, like, hey, Jared Bednar feels like, I'll take a front office job. You take my head coaching job. That would be fun. Yeah, that'd be something we could talk about. Where is Kay? So Kay says, just listen to the MacFarland press conference. It doesn't sound like he's really confident he will come back, maybe ever.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, you just read the body language from Chris MacFarland, and it wasn't just for the Landeskog stuff. Like I said before, I think he just wanted to be somewhere else, but he did kind of have a way about him when he was answering those Landeskog questions. Lisa says, has Landeskog earned the right to continue to battle to come back? Sure, but at some point, a decision needs to be made. I would love nothing more than to see him play again, but it's just beginning to seem more and more unrealistic. I guess I just don't think it's fair to keep the organization hanging in terms of his salary and making player moves. Yes, but I would go back to what I said. Like it hasn't come into play yet. It hasn't. If he was ready to go in November, it would have come into play then, but then you have more time to really figure that out. It's tough to do that right around the trade deadline. And then, try to make moves on top of that. You can't do both.
Well, it doesn't make things better when front office is also before the season and you're talking about draft prospects and you're talking, well, if Landeskog, when he returns, like it's a factor you're planning on, and then the season just continues on as normal and you don't get Landeskog, it's a little annoying.
And Craig, wasn't Craig your best friend? Was it Craig?
He can be, depending on what we say here.
Well, I hate to say it, but Kyle might be right about Gabe needing to retire. So yes, best friend. He's a great asset to the team, but it may be time for him to take a different position. I get it. I know there's a lot of people that are in this realm right now because that news is fresh and the press conference is fresh, and we all just kind of we all figured that's where it was going. But to hear it from Chris MacFarland, all those people that were like, why are we doing this again, are front and center. And I completely understand that. But
I mean, go back the last 2 or 3 years and listen to every Landeskog press conference. And when we talk about it, all the same subtext comments and all the same sentiments are being said about the C. He's earned the right, but is this going on too long? Rinse, wash, repeat, copy, paste. It's the same story. And I honestly love Landeskog, but I am tired of the sideshow.
And again, because his cap number it hasn't come into play. What's the harm in just letting him do this? As soon as that becomes a reality, then that's a question that you have to, okay, we bring him back and then it doesn't work. Then we're in a whole nother ball of wax here. So it has gone on for a very long time, but I just want to see the guy back just for a little bit. Who knows? We got to get to more of this press conference. We'll move on from the Landeskog stuff and get to the Ryan Lindgren stuff. We'll do that next. All right. So obviously he wasn't asked first about the Landeskog stuff. We just covered that first. He was asked first, obviously, about the Lindgren trade and said all the things he's going to say. He's not going to trade for a guy and say like, well, we just hope he does good. Well, like, he kind of was like, we really are thinking we can bring the best out in him. The thing that I thought was interesting was he said, if Jared Bednar can use him wherever he needs to use him. And he said, on either pairing, 1, 2, or 3. Now, he's not going to use him on the first pairing if both of those guys are healthy.
Yeah.
But it's, I took that as like, well, if there's an injury that is, say, Makar's out for a game or Taves is out for a game, and depending on the matchup you're going up against, and he wants to play him on the top pairing, he's done that. He's done that with someone like Adam Fox. So I think that's where I took that was like, if you need to do it because he has done it, he can step in for a short period of time and do that. He's mainly going to be second, third pairing, probably fluctuate between that. And I have no problem with that. But clearly he's happy that he got someone like Ryan Lindgren.
Yeah, and I like hearing him talk about the veteran grit that he brings. Again, those are the two buzzwords that you hear a lot when it comes to trade deadline acquisitions is depth and grit. And if he can provide it, that's great. And hearing Bednar's comments about Lindgren and how he doesn't want him to be on a line with Manson makes you kind of see how they're balancing these D pairs. I'm looking forward to it. I want to see if this little extra size that he has and this grit comes into play, or if this is going to be like Zadorov or Ryan Graves or Curtis McDermott. It's nice to have, but not nice to keep.
No, I wouldn't put him in the Graves or definitely not the McDermott category. He's got a little bit more hockey sense than that. But and that's the other part that MacFarland said was, he mentioned a couple times, and the Avalanche, this is no surprise. Like he mentioned, like he's a high character guy.
Oh yeah.
That's who the Avalanche go after. Like they're not going to go after. They want guys that like
Trouba.
No. I don't. Jacob Trouba would never be a Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people want like Brad Marchand. Like I don't think so.
No.
For two reasons. One, because of his attitude. Second is like, did you watch him in the Four Nations tournament? Like he seemed to struggle to keep up with the big boys, like shift after shift after shift. So I don't know if he was injured or it's just where he's at in his career. But I really don't think I've never really kind of looked hard into Brad Marchand for those reasons. But like, yeah, Trouba it's not the type of guys that the Avalanche want to go after. It's hockey. You're going to have to get some guys that, want to hit and have a lot of grit and want to mix it up, but the right way. Yeah. There's a right way to do that in hockey. And the way that guys like Trouba and Rempe do it are not the right way. He does. And that's what they look for. And they needed that. And he was the guy that fit the mold for them. So that's who they went after.
I'm very curious to see how it works. And if they do make more trades and moves, if it complements Lindgren as well, because of a grand plan that they might have for this decor.
Well, you mentioned that, so we'll go there. He did say, he was asked, more or less, is this it? And he said, we're going to, like any GM does, we're going to look at what's out there, what fits, what packages and all that stuff. I don't think the Avalanche are done. There's no way that this is going to be their one and only move that they made more than a week ahead of the trade deadline and then stand pat. So you're probably going to see another move or two, probably depth forwards would be my guess, But who knows if something comes along where you can add even more defense, you do it because that's what you need in the playoffs.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. It feels like another forward move, and especially off his comments of what he expects out of Casey Middlestead, like for him to even address that and project that, I feel like that chip is off the table. That is your set 2C for at least 24-25. Pieces around that I feel like are going to be built. Maybe some more third and fourth line stuff, and maybe something that, depending on what's asked and what has to go out, maybe something on the second line. But I feel like depth forwards are going to be what you're hearing from.
I think so. And then he mentioned Jared Bednar, and he was asked about him, and we joke about it, but there's always those hashtag fire Bednar people. If you just go through the comment section and any of these episodes that we have over on YouTube, you'll see it where every once in a while you get a smattering of, I think it's a coaching issue when the Avalanche are having some struggles. I'll tell you this, if what Chris MacFarland said, and then you fast forward to the offseason and for some ungodly reason they fired Jared Bednar, I'll never trust Chris MacFarland for the rest of my life, because he said, I think he's not only the best coach in hockey, I think he's one of the best coaches all across sports. You don't say something like that and then get rid of that guy. I've never thought it's even in the mind of the Avalanche to get rid of Jared Bednar. I think they absolutely love the job that he's doing. I don't think they want this revolving door of coaches that goes on with so many teams in the NHL. They're happy that they got the right guy. He knows how to coach a lot of different egos on the team, and he's proven that he can win doing that. And then you get these comments from Chris MacFarland to basically back up that they love what he's doing, which should be no surprise.
And with everything we talked about in the first two segments about Gabe Landeskog, what makes you think a tiny little step back in the standings? Why do you think they're going to get rid of Jared Bednar? He's going to be coaching here. He could have 3 losing seasons in a row. Like, they're going to keep him. He's going to be here for the rest of eternity.
It's such a good point. They're being so patient with Gabe Landeskog. Why would one season where it's not even a bad season? You're comfortably in a playoff spot, in a wild card spot, but I know you want to be higher. But why would this lead to a firing of one of the best coaches in the league? Makes zero sense.
Yep.
Zero. So, but I'm sure we'll get some people who don't agree with us, but that's fine. All right. So go watch that press conference, a 15-minute press conference that there's a lot of good nuggets in there. We covered kind of like the big ones. Now we got a game. So we had a few days off. Pittsburgh comes to town, a team that is reeling. Mm-hmm. They just cannot figure it out for this year. But how many times have we said that, a team coming in that you would think that the Avalanche really should be able to handle, and it hasn't happened. So again, I'm going back to I'm not taking this game for granted mantra, because yes, the last 2 games have been good, but what about the 2 games before that? That was the horrible weekend that they had. But you go into this game, it's another home game. Everything is lined up for the Avalanche to win this thing. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, because if you break it down by the numbers, they're almost identical when it comes to special teams. So you're not really getting the advantage there. Avalanche are clearly a better team top to bottom. And if I was anybody from second line down on this team, even D-core, the Pittsburgh Penguins are 30th in goaltending. Like, goals against, they are atrocious. So if I wanted to stay a member of the Colorado Avalanche past this trade deadline, I would take advantage of that. I would start scoring at will. I want to be on Hattie watch for 2 or 3 players. I want to show that I want to be part of this future for the Colorado Avalanche past the deadline. And I would take it. This better be the 10 spot that I have been wanting so much for the Colorado Avalanche, because this is it. Like, they just made a move. Again, they moved on from Mikko. You have Natchez, you have Drury, you have now Lindgren, you have Vesey. Now, who wants to stick around? Because there might be another move. Prove you want to play. We've seen this team play lifeless. We've seen them play well. this is one of those teams you should play well. And if you don't, magnifying glass is on you.
Yeah, man. You're right. It's like they just can't seem to get anything right. And you look at their, their the one stat, and again, it's the plus minus stat, whatever. There's two guys on the team that are plus, and they're plus one, both of them. And one guy is named Sam Polin, has played 6 games.
Yeah. Wilkes-Barre guy.
And the other one is I'm so sorry if I'm butchering your name, Bokandi in Imama. I think that's, I'm so sorry if I'm butchering your name, but he's got 7 games in and he's a plus 1. Everybody else is in the minus. Right up at the top is Sidney Crosby at minus 23. Brian Rust is minus 23. Raquel is minus 22. Carlson's minus 21. Malkin's minus 21. It's just they can't stop you from scoring. And if you look at like the metrics and like the blueprints and the heat maps and stuff like that, everything is in the net front. They can't stop anything in the net front. And now the Avalanche have a couple guys that can do some damage at the net front. So let's see if that kind of turns the tide here. I'm really hoping it does, because these are 2 points that you absolutely have to have.
Yeah, it's 2 points you need, and the floodgates need to be open. This is gut check time. And if you want to just get out there and be lazy and coast, management's looking, Bednar is looking. We will find somebody who wants to play here. And if you just want to coast and clock in, clock out, we'll find somebody who actually wants to see this team excel in the playoffs.
Give me a prediction. Are you getting your 10?
I'm getting my 10.
You're getting your 10 for this?
10-1.
All right. There it is. You heard it here first. Check back tomorrow. See if he's right.
Never am.
Thank you for tuning in and making this one your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about that Pittsburgh game. Anything else going on in Avs Nation? He's Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. Maybe you're 24 hours closer of Sidney Crosby remaining in Colorado and being a member of the Colorado Avalanche.
No.